Hello, good evening and welcome to another episode from me, B. Hope you're all doing well out there. It occurred to me the other day, I'm so far in front with my videos now. We could have had an alien invasion, and I'm either here, the only survivor broadcasting to myself, or you're all still there and are wondering why I haven't commented on it. Yes, I do have an odd mind. Anyway, sit back and relax as I take you into Unsolved Cases. Between April the 11th and April the 12th, 1981, Glenna Sue Sharp and 3 others were brutally killed in the resort town of Keddie, California. To this day, the murders remain unsolved. Discovered on the morning of April the 12th, 1981, the murders were committed over the course of the preceding night. The normally peaceful Keddie resort was stunned by the crime and the vicious violence inflicted upon the victims. Part of Plumas County, the Keddie cabin is located in the Sierra Nevada region of Northern California. Developed during and following the California Gold Rush of 1849, the region's rugged terrain is a popular destination for those who love the outdoors. The area is perfect for hiking, kayaking and camping. Named for the Rio de Plumas that flows through it, Plumas County is dotted by a variety of lodges and campsites that offer beautiful landscapes and simple rustic living. Plumas National Forest offers over 1 million acres of undeveloped stunning woods, rivers and streams. More than 70% of the region is part of the National Service. Attracted by the landscape and weather, outdoorsy types flock to the area year-round. Named after Arthur W. Keddie, the surveyor who helped the railway cut through the mountain region, the Keddie Resort, prior to the murders, was an ideal place to relax and escape the modern world and its many distractions. At the centre of the resort was a rustic hotel, surrounded by a bar and speckled with tiny efficient cabins. The 2-storey lodge also offered rooms, but many guests, particularly families, preferred the privacy and space of the cabins. The resort's restaurant, with its offerings of exotic meats and elaborate dishes, was a popular destination for diners from as far away as San Francisco. In 1981, the resort was accessible only by a small single-lane bridge over Spanish Creek and its narrow pedestrian walkway, which led to Keddie Resort Road. By then, Keddie was no longer the success it had been, and owner Gary Molleth had begun to rent the property's cabins as low-income dwellings. While some of its inhabitants were somewhat transient, it was a close-knit community, and neighbours typically looked out for one another. The Sharp family moved to Keddie in November of 1981. Sue, a 35-year-old single mother, rented cabin 28 with her children, John 15, Sheila 13, Tina 12 and 2 little boys. The family of 6 squeezed into the efficient little home, the younger girls and boys sharing a room, with Sue usually on the couch or with the girls. John, as the oldest, had the privilege of converting the basement space into his private domain. The children all fitted in well to Keddie, quickly befriending local peers and frequently socialising within the community. Many neighbours, however, were unsure of Sue, judging the attractive single mom for what they considered a parade of unfamiliar guests who frequented her home, as well as her relaxed parenting style. Neighbour Zanita Seabolt said, "I didn't feel any better about Sue then, because I just felt like I was very judgmental and thought she should have been a better mother. I wouldn't let my kids go over there, but I always welcomed her kids over to our house, wanted them to be there and be safe, but The night it happened, they wanted Paula to stay the night and I wouldn't let her stay, and I just felt that my kids didn't belong over there." Another neighbour stated, "The mother was the type who had a lot of men friends, constant comings and goings, as I understand it. You know, everyone knew that the family was on welfare, and in those days that was not a popular thing to have happen to you here in Plumas County, and so you immediately had a sort of stigmatism attached to you. You know, there were a lot of rumours at the time about, my gosh, the way she deals drugs. It could be anybody. It could have been a big drug party that got out of hand. Some of the rumours dealt with her sleeping with various men for money." In addition to these rumours, it was well known that the Sharp children struggled in school, and most blamed Sue for this fact. Tina's teachers recall, "I remember Tina as being a little bit slow. At school she was in special education classes, and that's all I can relate to her being slow, because she was a normal kid to me." Another teacher adds, "As a student, Tina was not a grade level A. She was in special ed class and was getting extra help. I would help her one-on-one, but she really didn't get the help that she needed at home. She was struggling with everything, but she was one of the sweetest, nicest little girls I think I've ever had." John, as the oldest Sharp child, was ferociously protective of his family. A slightly built teen with stylishly shaggy hair, his quick heated temper often got him into trouble at school. John spent the evening of April the 11th with his close friend, Dana Wingate. Born nearly 2 months prematurely, Dana suffered from health issues, including diabetes, throughout his life. Little is known about what went on inside of Cabin 28 on this evening, but John and Dana's activities are fairly well documented. My wife and I operated a receiving home for the county of Plumas, and during the time that we were there, Dana Wingate became one of our clients. Living in the group home, Dana had the responsibility of keeping my wife and I informed of where he was at all times. So true to his responsibility, he came to the house on the afternoon of the terrible incident that occurred, and he and Johnny asked if he could go to Johnny's that evening and spend the night. And with the proviso, my wife insisted that they not hitchhike down the 7 miles to Keddy, but as we know now, that's exactly what they ended up doing. This road was often frequented by teen hitchhikers, making their way to and from Keddy's neighbouring town of Quincy. Based on a detailed timeline, both boys are believed to have arrived back at Cabin 28 between 11 p.m. and midnight. Many investigators believe that they arrived either shortly before the murderers entered the home, or while the killings were already in progress. The next morning, Sheila Sharp returned home around 8 a.m. The scene was horrible beyond belief, as Sheila Sharp looked through the window of her mother's house in Keddy, California. Inside, on the living room floor, lay the corpses of her mother, her brother and his friend. All had been tortured and viciously murdered. Upon entering the house, Sheila immediately took in the carnage and weapons strewn about the family room, before racing back to the neighbours to report what she'd seen. Upon their arrival, police were stunned by the violence and gruesomeness of the murders. All of the victims had been bound and repeatedly stabbed and beaten with a claw hammer. Even the furniture and walls had been sliced and stabbed, apparently as the murderer or murderers exploded in homicidal, boundless rage. Speaking to the San Francisco Chronicle in 2001, Plumas County Sheriff's Patrol Commander, Rod DeCrona, said that the victims were stabbed so violently they bent one knife totally double from the force. DeCrona continued, "They stabbed and pounded on everything in sight, the walls, the people, the furniture, everything." DeCrona said that there was blood sprayed absolutely everywhere. The weapons and the restraints used on the victims seemed to have originated in the home, indicating that perhaps the intruders had not initially planned to kill anyone. Only feet away, the 2 youngest Sharp boys and their overnight guest Justin remained unharmed. They were removed from the property through their bedroom windows so that they would not have to see the bloody crime scene in the family room. The small resort community was terrified and appalled by the killings. Neighbours located within a short distance of the cabin had heard nothing out of the ordinary. Worse still, 12-year-old Tina Sharp was missing from the crime scene, prompting many to believe that she had either been taken and killed elsewhere, or that her abduction may have served as a motive for the crime. Due to the number of victims and the savagery of the crimes, which employed multiple weapons, police believed they were looking for more than one killer. Lack of forced entry into the home increased suspicion that Sue may have willingly allowed her killer inside. Further complicating the difficult case were a number of mistakes made by the Plumas County Sheriff's Office. First, they failed to secure the crime scene from curious onlookers, and even refused to believe one of the young boys that they'd removed from the house when he insisted that someone had taken Tina. Despite an extensive search, no immediate sign of Tina was found. Suspects emerged, however. After questioning many Keddy residents, police released composite sketches of two men wanted for questioning in relation to the crime. To many, the sketches resembled Martin Smart and John Beau Boubaid. Smart, a neighbour of the Sharps, had a stepson, Justin, who stayed over at cabin 28 on the night of the murders. Smart and Beau had met each other at the VA hospital, and Beau was staying with Smart at Keddy. Both were interviewed in connection with the investigation. The two described a late night of drinking, yet Marty specifically detailed starting a small bonfire around 3 a.m. For some, this indicated that he may have been attempting to destroy evidence from the crime scene. Interestingly, his wife Marilyn freely admitted that she and Beau had visited the Sharp residence on the evening prior to the murders, stopping to invite Sue to the bar with them. Marty, it seemed, fancied the idea that single attractive Sue would be a good match for Beau. Sue declined the invitation, preferring to spend the night at home with her children and their friend. Patrons at the bar they frequented, the Back Door, recall that the always volatile Marty was especially aggravated that night, complaining about the bar's music and ultimately storming out of the establishment. According to his statement, Marty then returned home and went to bed after consuming a cocktail of prescribed sleeping medication, awakening at 3 a.m. to stoke the outdoor fire. Marty had a checkered, troubled history among Keddy residents. His wife Marilyn would later describe their chaotic life, which included unstable income and frequent moves. After Marty locally secured work as a chef, they settled at the Keddy Resort in 1980. During his interview, Beau corroborated the majority of Marty's statements, but also contradicted himself repeatedly. He stated that he'd been at the Keddy Resort for over a month, when in reality he'd been staying with the Smarts for less than 2 weeks. Beau also initially placed their arrival at Backdoor Bar around 9 or 10 p.m, but later changed his estimate to midnight in an effort to improve his alibi. Shortly after their interviews, both men left Plumas County. Inexplicably, the Plumas County Sheriff's Department failed to keep tabs on their suspects. Both men died years later, without ever being thoroughly questioned or investigated. In 1984, 3 years after the murders and Tina's disappearance, her skull was found in a forest 95 miles away from Keddy. It remains a mystery whether Tina had been killed along with her mother and brother and her body moved to another location, or if she had been abducted, kept alive and killed at a later time. Justin, the overnight guest at cabin 28 on the night of the murders, has recounted various recovered memories of Tina and Sue during the crimes. At one point during an interview with police, he described watching an episode of Love Boat with Sue, conflating details from the show with the violence he witnessed and trying to save her. This was a description of a dream that Justin had. I'm on my passenger boat. Somebody got thrown out and there was a fight. He had long black hair, short over the ear. His hair was combed back. He had black glasses with gold rings and a gold frame and black and brown lenses. He had a moustache, jean jacket, blue jeans, no belt. Cowboy boots. Black round toe with a squiggly design. He had a hammer in his left hand, and it had a wooden handle and a steel hammering thing, and a point at the end. Johnny and Dana fought the man. Dana was almost drunk. He was walking weird. A crowd gathered. Johnny was thrown overboard, and Dana, the man, ran away. A body was lying on the bow. The mom, Sue. She had black hair and a sheet over her. I looked under the sheet and she was slit on the chest. Everyone started to gather around her and we started to go to the shore. The man had a knife like a pocket knife in his right hand and he cut Sue. He didn't cut her first, no. Before he went off the boat, he cut her. There was another man dressed up like him. He was in the crowd, but when the man dove into the water they killed Sue. Nobody had a gun. Then I woke up. Due to his young age and the variations to his story, much of what Justin described was considered unreliable. It remains a distinct possibility that the little boy heard or saw the murders, possibly committed by his own stepfather. Justin's story, while spotty and confused in many areas, is also supported by evidence at the crime scene, including injuries, body positions, and the manner in which the victims were bound. He also offered insight into what happened to Tina, the only victim not found in the cabin. He described a terrifying scene. Tina comes out of her room dragging a blanket and asks what's going on. The two men then rush to Tina and grab her by the arms and drag her out the back door as she cries, "Help, help!" Later, the brown-haired suspect returns and covers up Sue with a blanket. Justin's recall also added credence to the suspicion that Sue had known her killer. He distinctly remembers both intruders referring to her by name. Terrified by what he had witnessed, Justin says he returned to the room he was sharing with the youngest Sharp boys and went back to sleep, awakening in the morning when police came to remove them from the home. With Justin's statements in doubt and two deceased suspects, the Keddy murder case soon ran cold. The resort town, already in decline, fell further into disrepair as the pall of the violent killings hung over its mountains. Cabin 28 soon became dubbed the local murder house. In 1984, the resort was put up for sale, the asking price $1.8 million. This is the same year that Tina's remains were discovered, and the renewed interest and news coverage dissuaded most buyers. Abandoned for many years, the entire resort, especially the Sharp cabin, was a massive draw for curious thrill seekers. In the decades that followed the crime, many have reported various evidence of paranormal activity, including shadows and disembodied moans. "I hate it when people call this a ghost town," said Lynn Seavey, 46, who lived next to the murder house. "Keddy is a nice peaceful place where you can hear the wind in the trees. I wish people would get over what happened." After the property was revamped by Moloth, he razed the cabin to the ground in 2004, stating that, "The house has been such a negative point for so long that I intend to tear it down and put a park there. Then I'm going to open this place back up and cater to groups. With people travelling closer to home now, I think the timing will be just right. I want people to come and say, 'Wow,' when we start up again, not be scared." While the crime scene has been completely destroyed, the murders of Sue Sharp, her two children, and their friend Dana Wingate remain unsolved. Harold and Aquila Degree married on Valentine's Day in 1988. Their son, O'Brien, was born a year later. Arsha was born in 1990. The Degrees raised both children in their house on Oakcrest Drive, in a residential subdivision, amidst a generally rural area north of Shelby, North Carolina, on the western edge of the Charlotte metropolitan area. Both worked regular jobs nearby. The children let themselves in after school, where their parents expected that they would be either doing their homework or finished with it by the time they returned. They made sure their children were insulated from outside influences and had a life centred around their extended family, church and school. The Degrees did not have a computer in the house. Every time you turned on the TV, there was some paedophile who'd lured somebody's child away via the internet, Aquila recalled in a 2013 Jet interview. Aquila said Arsha handled this well. She was cautious, shy, and content mostly to stay within the limits her parents set. She was scared to death of dogs, she recalled years later. "I never thought she would go out of the house." Arsha was in 4th grade at nearby Falston Elementary School, going into a 3-day weekend on the 2nd week of February 2000. The Cleveland County schools were closed on Friday, February the 11th, while the Degrees still had to work. The children spent the day at their aunt's house in the same neighbourhood, from which they went to their youth basketball practices at their school. The following day, Arsha's basketball team, on which she was a star point guard, lost its first game of the season. Arsha had fouled out. Her parents recalled that she was somewhat upset about this, crying along with her teammates afterwards, but seemed to have gotten over it and watched her brother's game after. On February the 13th, a Sunday, the children went to church from a relative's house and then returned home. Around 8 p.m. that night, both children went to bed in the room they shared. Almost an hour later, the power went out in the neighbourhood after a nearby car accident. The power came back on at 12:30 a.m, at which time Harold checked on his children and saw both Asha and O'Brien asleep in their beds. He checked again shortly before he went to bed at 2:30 a.m. on February the 14th and again saw them both. Shortly afterwards, O'Brien, then aged 10, recalls hearing Asha's bed squeak. He did not further rouse himself as he assumed she was merely changing positions in her sleep. Apparently around this time, Asha got out of bed, taking a book bag she'd previously packed with several sets of clothes and personal items, and left the house. Between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m, a truck driver and a motorist saw her walking south along Highway 18, wearing a long-sleeved white t-shirt and white pants, just north of its junction with Highway 180. They reported this to police after seeing a TV report about her disappearance. The motorist said that he turned his car around because he thought it was strange such a small child would be out by herself at that hour. He circled 3 times and saw Degree run into the woods by the roadside and disappear. It was a rainy night and the witness said there was a storm raging when he saw her. County Sheriff Dan Crawford said, "We're pretty sure it was her because the descriptions they gave are consistent with what we know she was wearing." He added that they also saw her at the same place heading in the same direction. Aquila awoke at 5:45 a.m. to get the children ready for school. That morning this involved drawing a bath for them because they'd not been able to take one the night before due to the power outage. When she opened the children's door to wake them up before their 6:30 alarm and call them to the bath, O'Brien was in his bed. Asha was not, and Aquila was unable to find her in the house or in the family cars. She told Harold she could not find their daughter. He suggested Asha might have gone over to his mother's house across the street. When Aquila called there, her sister-in-law said Asha was not there. "That's when I went into panic mode. I heard a car next door. I put shoes on and ran outside." Aquila called her mother, who told her to call the police. By 6:40 a.m, the first police officers had arrived on the scene. Police dogs called to the scene could not pick up Asha's scent. Aquila went through the neighbourhood calling Asha's name, which she said had awakened everybody by 7 a.m. Friends, family and neighbours cancelled their plans for the day to assist police in searching the vicinity, while the pastor of their church, along with other area clergymen, came to the Degrees' home to support them. By the end of the day, all that had been found was a mitten, which Aquila Degree said did not belong to her daughter, noting that no winter clothing had been taken from the house. Local news coverage prompted the 2 drivers who had seen Asha walking along the road early that morning, including the one whose attempt to approach her apparently prompted Asha to flee into the woods, to report the sightings to police. On February the 15th, candy wrappers were found in a shed at a nearby business along the highway, near where Asha had been seen running into the woods. Along with them were a pencil, marker and Mickey Mouse-shaped hair bow that were identified as belonging to her. Also found was a photograph of a black girl around Asha's age, who was yet to be identified. It was the only trace of her found during the initial search. On February the 16th, Aquila realised that Asha's bedroom was missing her favourite clothing, including a pair of blue jeans with a red stripe. A week later, the search was called off, after 9,000 man-hours had been invested in a search of the 2 to 3 mile radius of where she had last been seen. Flyers had been posted all over the area, and 300 leads had been submitted that ranged from possible sightings to tips about abandoned houses and wells where Asha might have ended up. "We've never really had that first good substantial lead," said County Sheriff Dan Crawford at a news conference. He urged the media to keep the story alive. At the news conference on February the 22nd, 2000, Crawford said he was going long range with the search for Asha. Both the FBI and North Carolina's State Bureau of Investigation got involved and put her on their respective databases of missing children. While the agencies were done searching in the area of her home and route, "We're following everything," he insisted. From Aquila's account of what Asha had taken with her, investigators believed she had planned and prepared for this departure over the several days preceding her disappearance. "She's not your typical runaway," observed SBI agent Bart Burpo. Another expert, Ben Ermine, of the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children, noted that most children who run away are at least 12. An FBI agent also pointed to the lack of an issue she might have been running away from, such as a dysfunctional family or poor academic performance. Still, investigators believed that was the most likely explanation for her departure, but that for some reason she either got off track or was abducted. The media attention went national. A month after Arsha's disappearance, the Degree family appeared on the Montel Williams show to call attention to the case. America's Most Wanted and the Oprah Winfrey Show also devoted segments to it. On August 3, 2001, Arsha's book bag and other items were discovered during a construction project off Highway 18 in Burke County, near Morganton, about 26 miles north of Shelby. It was wrapped in a plastic bag. The worker who found it said the book bag contained Arsha's name and phone number. The FBI took it to their headquarters for further forensic analysis. Results from that testing have not been shared publicly. To date, it is the last evidence found in the case. On the 20th anniversary of Arsha's disappearance, the FBI confirmed that the book bag contained a copy of Dr. Seuss's McElligot's Pool and a t-shirt depicting the band New Kids on the Block. Neither appeared to have been her property before they were found in her bag. The book was from the library at her elementary school. Later leads have turned out to be dead ends. In 2004, acting on a tip reportedly received from an inmate at the county jail, the sheriff's office began digging at an intersection in Lawndale. The bones that were found turned out to be from an animal. The Degrees took steps to keep Arsha's memory and the case alive in the public's mind. In 2008, they established a scholarship in her name for a deserving local student. They host an annual walk to raise awareness and money to fund their search. The walk starts at their home and ends at a missing persons billboard for Arsha along Highway 18, near where she was last seen. It was originally held on February the 14th, but it was changed to February the 7th in 2015 and February the 6th in 2016, as Harold and Aquila felt it was not fair for participants to make Valentine's Day a sombre occasion. Pictures of Arsha, both real and those showing her as she might appear in later years, created by investigators to help the search, still decorate the Degree house. I fully expect her to walk through the door, Aquila says. And that's it for another week. Thank you so much for your company and for tuning in. Really appreciate it as always. Look after yourselves this next week. Until I see you again, take care. Stay well, stay healthy, stay happy, stay lucky, and most of all, stay spooky.